Hello, this is Farrell Benson with Nation 473. Coming to you guys with a little bit of an update. We did a video on how to fish, so to say, with long range formations. The idea around it was talking to the unit types. What do they specialize in? How to use them for long range troops specifically. And the idea behind that is giving everyone the opportunity and ability to come up with non-standard fleets, especially in like instances where, you have a particularly bloody void. And in your particularly bloody void, you end up leaving yourself with less than a full fleet of troops for your ideal composition. Cough, cough, me, cough, cough. So this video is going to be the same concept, but in this case, we're going to actually be focusing on mid-range units. And I want everyone to always remember you can use some of these troops regardless. Like for mid-range players, you can use some of the long-range troops for the benefits that they provide. As a long-range player, I do recommend using some of the mid-range troops for the benefits that they also provide, right? Especially in sniper versus sniper combat, adding in some rockets is actually a very fun way to beat somebody else who's also using snipers. So just some food for thought. Just because we're here as an update, in the previous long range video, I did talk about making a very troll T11 shielder comp. Basically, I'm going to try to get a full fleet of shielders and troll people in the mines for a couple weeks. See how it goes. Well, maybe not a couple weeks, maybe a couple days. I don't know. We'll see how this plays out. But I got enough comments in that video. It is happening. So you guys can see here, we're up to 3,000. So we're only, like, if we add a 0 to that, we still don't have enough. So it'd be like add a 0 and double it. It might be a little bit, but I am working on it. I promise I will get a full fleet of shielders to play around with. So I will have the most shielders of any long range city in AOZ. So without further ado, mid range. So when it comes to mid range fleets, and specifically mid range troops, there's a couple things that you always have to keep in mind when you're setting up your fleets for the uranium mines. And that is the distance between you and your target is a heck of a lot closer, right? So, even for my current fleets, right, I do use some mid-range troops, so you can kind of get the idea, although I don't have a ton anymore. But you can see, right, your troops are right here. It is the next thing to die right after your melee goes down. And I mean, this is a mid-range player, so hey, guess what? We can even see it from the opposite perspective, right? He's still working on my melee, and he was a long-range player. I'd have to kill his zombies before I actually get to his long-range troops. And so that's kind of the thing with being a mid-range player is the distance between you and death is a lot closer. So generally speaking, you're going to want to have a lot more melee troops. And I plan on doing a melee unit guide so that you can have an idea of what kinds of melee troops that you can use in order to maximize those particular fleets. And that's the one I play around with the most, right? Out of all of the troops in this entire game, the one that I play around with the absolute most is melee. So that video is actually going to be one of the most solid and well-rounded ending points for this particular fleet discussion. But we need to get through mid-range because you need to know how to work with them, and they are the best damage-dealing troops for the uranium mines specifically, and for the most part, city battles too. The only thing is they're not as good in team play because of that distance between you and death. So that is the part that I want to impress upon everyone. When it comes to mid-range fleets, please use more melee. How much? We'll talk about that in the melee video. But you're going to play with it anyways, so even if I told you a number, you're going to change it. So mid-range troops have two different classifications. You have your splash damage and you have your direct damage. They're very different styles of troops, right? And I say this because like even with the long range, like you have a little bit of that with long range fleets, but it's really prevalent with mid range because both styles are effective in different places. So oftentimes you'll find yourself using split comps. Most of the time you're mid range, you're generally going to have more than one unit. And the reason you will see that very, very often comes down to like Raven here, who I just hit in the mines. He's using mostly gunners and some T11 stormtroopers. Why? Well, these are easy to recruit. These are hard to recruit. But also, these aren't as good as these. And you can even see that in this breakdown, right? He had half as many troops for the T11 stormtroopers, and they did almost as much damage as the T11 gunners. And that's just because gunners don't do good against melee. And that's true of any direct damage composition. They don't do very good against melee. What they do very good against is low melee compositions. So, what are your direct damage? Let's get into it. So we have our T11 gunners. Why do I say they're direct damage versus a splash damage? Has to do with their special ability, fire suppression. So every 5 attacks will enter quick shot status, increasing attack speed by 50% for 3 seconds, or by 120% in PvE battles, which doesn't matter. But PvE is literally like Doom Arena, I guess. Like these things destroy in Doom Arena, in case you're wondering. Like destroy in Doom Arena. You wanna see something hilarious? Use a bunch of T11 gunners in your next Doom Arena and watch what happens. Because you will keep up with the whales, but or at least the long range whales. Like the T11 gunners are insane in Doom Arena, but it comes down to 2 parts. And this is when we need to understand the most about the troop card, because with long range troops, everything is really very homogeneous. It doesn't change much. The attack speed of all long range troops is 2. Every single one of these troops is always 2. Every one. Every single long range troop in the game has an attack speed of 2. This is not true at all of mid range cities. So you need to understand why this matters. So when it says every 5 attacks is not 10 seconds like it would be for a long range city. The attack cooldown on gunners is 1.5 seconds base. So that means it is 30 seconds faster than your long range counterparts. So direct damage compositions with specifically mid range generally work a little better, especially with Katie. Especially with Eric's new like breakthrough skill. Maria actually works really good for this. Docs really works great for this. And I think that's it, right? Right. Yes. Yeah, that's all of them. So all of the on hit directors, or sorry, breakthrough skills work really, really good for this. Also, the island. If you don't know, there's an electrocution status that can be applied with if you get a specific island building up enough because you spent way too much money on Triangle War. So that electrocution status, again, is an on-hit effect. All of these on-hit effects go off more with gunners than they do with everything else. I'm spending so much time on this because I want you to understand why this is better than a sniper. Because you've heard me just basically crap talk snipers for 3/4 of the time I've had this channel. So there's a reason why this is slightly better than a sniper, and the reason being is it's 30 seconds faster for doing similar damage, right? So the attack value on this is 212. The attack value on this is 279 for the T12. So, I mean, you're looking at a, what is that, 67 damage difference, but it's attacking 30 seconds faster. This does more damage than that, in case you're ever wondering. So, just a thing to understand. The other thing is attack range on mid-range troops are lower, so you got to be closer. That does mean that they get some advantages, though. So first and foremost, it comes down to how fast they attack. Again, there's that speed. The other thing that you're going to generally find is most of the mid-range troops are single units. So you don't have any of this weird shenanigans with having like a 10-unit troop like an EMP cannon or a cannon that you really want to use. The only exception to that is the other high damage single target mid-range troop, which is the bike. So the bike is the only 5-unit troop. It is also the other direct damage. The bike is unique. So its ability is Speed Racer. For the first 10 seconds of battle, increases attack speed by 60%. Duration is 30 seconds in PvE battles. Similar to the machine guns, these things are absolutely crazy in Doom Arena for whatever reason, because most of those Doom Arena battles don't last more than 30 seconds. So it goes in there and says, hey, I have a 0.4 second attack that hits for about as much as a sniper. Now, it is 5 units, so here's the caveat. A T12 sniper hits harder than one bike, but one bike hits twice as fast base. With that particular ability in play, it hits 4 times as fast. So for every 1 sniper bullet you get out, you can get out 4 bike shots. I know a lot of very old school mid-range players swear by bike comps. There is a dead C38 in 473 by the name of Deep, and Deep was an adamant bike user. Like, that man had full fleets of bikes because they do disintegrate people very early, especially if you have higher stats. But they suffer from the same issue that the gunners do, which is they kind of struggle with specifically getting through melee. But because of their already incredibly fast attack speed and the fact that, like, by the time a gunner can get 2 shots off, this thing's attacked 3 times, even at the best of scenarios, they really do fine even without their passive ability up. The other thing to think about with bikes is if you're fighting a lot of purple warplanes disruption status does absolutely jack diddly nothing to this troop type. It does nothing. Because its ability goes off in the right at the beginning of combat for the first 10 seconds and never again. There's no active ability for this unit to do good damage. But I still, there's a reason you don't see a lot of bike heavy comps, and that's just because the Queen's Crown for the Titan will pretty much make this unit worthless. So, I mean, hate to say it, but in PvP combat, they're really not all that great after Titan equipment came out. So, those are the direct damage. Again, you have gunners and bikes. I highly recommend these for challenge elite zombie, challenging Doom Iron, right? So Doom Iron Grasp. They do good in Mother of Doom. Right? Anything where you have a single troop or single enemy that you need to deal with, these will disintegrate them. So it is your sniper equivalent for long range players. So, splash damage. This is what most mid-range cities need to focus on. And there's a reason behind that. The splash damage in general is your best bet against long-range cities. It also performs admirably against other mid-range cities, although some of the direct damage compositions can compete in mid-range to mid-range combat. But for the most part, you could still use a splash damage composition and be fine because, well, the troops you get to pick from are insane. So let's talk about the T-12 rockets. And I'm starting with the T-12 rockets because of my C-41 predictions. Also because this is not technically the best unit for mid-range, although it is like, it does the most damage. But my only issue with the rockets in general is there is a comparable amount of damage that you can get from the T-11 Stormtroopers. So their ability is Overshoot. Every third cast of Overshoot deals tons of damage, prioritizing the enemy's back row within range. The within range is the important piece of this, because what will end up happening is if you are not careful with where your positioning is for your rockets within combat, you may be out of range of their long-range troops. And so a long-range city will actually get an advantage because your rockets aren't in the right position. Generally, how this plays out is if you use 4 melee or 4 mid-range troops, your rockets are going to be placed on the right side of your zombies. And the only reason why this matters is because their range is 2.5. If they're on the right side of the zombies, and you are going up against a long-range city with 4 units, the snipers will be far to the left and out of range. And so all of a sudden, a sniper comp is going to start beating you, despite the fact that these things will disintegrate most snipers. So just keep that in mind. The best way to actually deal with this with a mid-range city is to use a single gunner when you're setting up a fleet with T-12s. Because if you put just one gunner in that fleet, it's going to kick this bad boy right over to the left side of the zombies. And now they're in range of the snipers, the cannons, and the EMP cannons the entire fight. And they're going to be behind your shredders and tanks. So your rockets are going to be well protected throughout the entire duration of the fight. The real curse tech you can get into, if you want to get to the curse tech, is you can do a composition with one gunner, a bunch of rockets, majority rockets, and then throw in some of the T-11 Stormtroopers, which we will go over right now. Oh, by the way, this is where the attack cooldown starts to match mid-range, back to 2 seconds. So the splash damage troops are basically like long range in the attack cooldown, so we can start to ignore that now. But again, curse tech. We're talking fun stuff. The T-11 Stormtroopers, the reason why they are amazing is Chain Lightning. Right, so every 3 attacks, cast Chain Lightning, deal tons of damage to 3 units. And prioritize attacking enemies' back row within range. Damage can be stacked on a single target if there's only one. And I say if there's only one, even though it doesn't say that, because that's the only way damage can be stacked. After a few 100,000 hits, I've come to learn this. So, okay. We've talked about the abilities, and now I've promised you curse tech. So why do I say that? The idea of a 3 mid-range fleet, and we're just going to like send out something in the mines. We're going to hit a person because this is a thing I have to demonstrate, even though I'm a long-range city. I have to demonstrate this because otherwise, like, you may not understand what I'm talking about. So keep in mind, my mid-range attack is like oh, I don't know. I think it's like 450 something, maybe low 500s. I think it's low 500s with Panda, as I recall. That's one of my alliance mates. I'm trying to find somebody around 400, but if I don't, it's fine. Sure. So here we have a 4.8 million BP guy. He's got a decent amount of uranium. We're going to go ahead and just do a mid-range fleet for the sake of this video. I'm going to do, again, a lot of long range because, or sorry, melee, because every fleet I do generally has a lot of mid-range. I try to hit around a third of my fleet. This is a little under. I'm actually going to pop in one T11 axe because I want to push the melee over to the left one space. So if you think about the beginning of the battle, I want to push the melee over to the left one space. With long range or with mid-range fleets, you want to have some back row because it keeps your Titans alive. So I generally recommend around 2,500 troops. It's what I've been doing. I mean, you could do less and probably get away with it. I'm just going to do that because this was my bread and butter. All right. And so now we get to play. So we're going to do the exact fleet that I just described to everyone, right? Here we go. So you can see here, I don't have enough to quite fill the fleet, so I'm just adding in a bunch of these lower level troops. It's fine. Actually, we can just spam a bunch of these to fill the fleet. All right. So, I mean, we've got a BP surplus over the player, right? I expect to win the fight, but we're really doing this for mechanics. Actually, we're just going to do that. We'll send not a full fleet. It's fine. Here we go. And so you can see here now my rockets and my stormtroopers are off to the left. Both of my melee troops are in front of them, which is what you always want with a mid-range composition. And what ends up happening is now, again, my rockets can hit all of the long-range troops for the whole fight. You can see the stormtroopers just hit all of the back row, right? They've killed off most of the stuff back there. And I've beat a player with not my optimal fleet. And pretty handedly, I mean, obviously, what, I had at least 1 million power over him. Like, yeah, he really, I mean, yeah, it's fine. He's not really all that strong. It's okay, but let's talk about this report because really it comes down to the mechanics that we care about, and 500% mid-range attack right now. So mechanics. We're going to replay this. So again, you can see the rockets are now going to hit the snipers first shot. And that matters, but it also matters on when. It does it on 2, right? So here comes the first hit. Hit 1. Hit 2. Stormtroopers. Hit 1. Hit 2. Killed those 3 units. So the reason why you get the most bang for your buck out of having mid-range troops is because of the second hit. At the beginning of the fight, long-range cities, specifically cannons, have to hit 3 times in order to have their special ability go off. So when you watch this cannon, on the enemy side, there's 1 hit, there's 2 hits, and that 1, 2, 3 that you see right there, that is the cannons going off. So again, 6 seconds into the fight, this cannon actually gets to do something. But by that point, it's already lost about 1,000 troops before it ever even gets a chance to go off. And that's how mid-range cities beat long-range cities, is because they whittle them down in the first 6 seconds so that when the first special goes off for a long range city, right? Well, technically first 4 seconds. So when the first special goes off at 6 seconds, they've already had the first bit of chip damage go off onto the targets themselves. So paying attention to that, this is how you can make your mid-range fleets beat long-range players, but also how you can have them beat other mid-range players. Because like for Raven here, watch the gunners. Hit 1, hit 2. Oh, wait. That was the stormtroopers. I was on the wrong side. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now he should have his speed. Yep. And that was true. So the gunners don't get the speed of the first 2 hits like your splash damage troops do. Your rockets and your stormtroopers get that 2-hit instant burst, whereas gunners and the bikes are an exception, but the gunners get that same 5 hits to wait as most long range troops do. As an aside, you can see that this dude had his stormtroopers hit all of my back row down here, and that really messed me up. So that's why these did so good in this loss. But he didn't have enough long range troops, so when my cannons went off, it just destroyed his back row. Also, snipers, 1, 2. They shoot their special on 2 as well. So if you ever want to kill melee really fast, actually snipers are better than gunners. So those are the mechanics around this. So this gets down to fleet recommendations, right? The one that I just showed you guys on this video is actually one of my favorite fleets to do. When I was playing long range, I loved this fleet for the specific reason that, I highlight, right? You get everything to shift into the right spot so that it always hits the right targets. It does good against every long-range city, and it will do good against most mid-range cities. The ones that it does tend to struggle a little bit more on are going to be the ones that have your gunners on the far side. So what ends up happening is when the gunners hit the far side over here, when your melee goes down, when your shredders go down, these guys can wrap around and kill your stormtroopers. So, and they'll do that before the tanks because of proximity. So that's how you can generally counter this fleet. And the only real way to counter this fleet is by doing that exact strategy. But it can happen with long range cities too and snipers. So this is also why you gotta be a little bit careful. And that's also why you need the axe. So the axe helps to prevent that from long range cities because these long range troops will walk onto that axe first. So anyways, that is the tank first. So that's why I mentioned the move. Is positioning matters the most in mid range. Yeah, that's kind of a lot of information about mid-range troops. I think that you guys can start to play around with. Really, it comes down to understand when your abilities are going off and maximize them. A stormtrooper heavy composition for C-35s, but also if you wanted to do that as a C-36, which I wouldn't blame you if you did, they delete Titans faster. Because when you get down to one long range troop in a fight, so like this one, right? When you get down to one long range troop, they'll start hitting Titans too. I guess you'll never see that in my fight because I have 2. But yeah, when you get down to one long range troop, they will actually start hitting Titans. So they can actually delete tightens very quickly. So, cool stuff. But I think that's everything. So, as always, if you guys like this kind of content, please let me know down in the comments. I hope everyone is really hyped for Melee, because Melee is weird and it is universal. Everyone has to deal with Melee troops. Everyone needs to understand how Melee troops work. Everyone uses Melee. So the next video that we're going to do in this series is going to be the one that ties this all in together. It's going to be the one that tells you why we use specific Melee troops, but it's also going to tell you a little bit more about some fleets you probably never thought of with Melee, or ways of doing things that you probably haven't ever played around with. So, spoiler alert. So please leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to check out that next one. And I'll see you then. Have a good day.